grateful to be here, not just because DevOps Days is such a rad event, and this has been so well organized. Thank you, Nathan, for welcoming me. But this is a moment where I just think it's so important that government and Silicon Valley and like non-government IT types start to come together. Can I get a show of hands who here like works in the federal government? How many folks in the room? And who here is part of the tech community in another capacity? All right, cool. So, not quite half and half, but a good mix. So before I jump in, I do want to take a minute on this, because Nathan gave me the stage, and so I'm going to take it. We're in this like wild moment where there's so much going on at the intersection between social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and government trying to be really helpful with some of the problems that are happening there. And we just need everyone to come together. And I've been talking to a lot of people on both sides, and it seems like it's a big problem to solve, of like how we all get in the same room and start to understand each other and start to transfer knowledge. And it's a rare thing, so I guess I didn't realize how struck I would be until I got here by just how like incredibly cool it is that we're all here together for this whole day. If you're interested in the question of how to tie this together more, please come talk to me after the talk. And also I have copies of my book, and I'll be giving 2 away. All right, let's get into it. We are here today to talk about containers, security, compliance, GDPR, HIPAA. Are these guidelines going to be useful, or will they just be another checkbox? I'm sure that a lot of you have seen this. I was previously working at a company that was building HIPAA compliance. And compliance just gets such a bad name, it gets such a bad rap because people want to just check off the boxes. But I feel really great about compliance because people do a lot more, people inside companies, do a lot more for security and privacy than they would otherwise. Of course, compliance and regulation isn't always so straightforward. It could be easier to just block Europe's users than to be GDPR compliant. But it's here, made in Italy and other places. I had so much to say, and then I realized like who would be in the audience. Does anyone have an interesting story to share about implementing GDPR at your office? Can I get 1 or 2 hands? I can't be the only one who's had like an interesting time with this. No one? One story? Something about your implementation, your experience? You're all GDPR privacy people. You're like, no. We can't share that. You have to consent. Yes, please.
A lot of cookie banners on our site.
Yes.
Yeah, that was sort of the main push.
Well, and how are your users responding?
I'm not sure, actually. So we do some advertising. So there's a piece there where, I guess they're agreeing.
I guess it's okay. Anyone else? Sending out emails? Banners? One more story. All right, you're real hardcore privacy people. I respect that. I'm a privacy person. So, GDPR is interesting in terms of the budget that we allocate and the risks. And I came across this and thought, those of us who are in the room are kind of on the other side for the most part. At least the people who I've talked to, right? Like, we actually want to be working on some of these things. I came across this. Fall asleep in seconds by listening to a soothing voice. Read the EU's new GDPR legislation. That actually sounds really calming. Have you heard it? You've heard this one? What's your experience with GDPR? Well, I'm trying to get some sleep, apparently, also. It's in the Calm app. Yeah, he's known for these kinds of narrations. Yeah, I happen to think it's really interesting, but I've kind of accepted that I have niche interests. Yeah, here's a little more details on the meditation app. So Facebook already faces a lawsuit, Facebook and Google, first day. And at first, I was really horrified about this, and I thought, you know, how could they not know that it was coming? Like, surely they knew. But it wasn't the EU that filed the suit, so there was just like the first day that someone could sue. I think that's going to be really interesting. We'll see what happens. Part of the issue with GDPR right now is like, can you be fully compliant? How do you know? Of people in the room, who here actually has had to work on implementing GDPR? Show of hands. How many of you are confident that like you did it, it's good, it's all gonna be good? Some of you. I think it's a bit like HIPAA. HIPAA's a really good example. I saw this ad. Tips for HIPAA compliance. How can you tell if you're compliant? People aren't sure. Here's an interesting example. Like, think about baby pictures. Baby pictures at the doctor's office. It's considered by many to be, you know, a HIPAA violation. Like, you won't see baby photos at the doctor's office due to the way that this has been handled. There are a lot of questions where it could go one way or go another way, and you don't really know until you see what the regulatory bodies and the judges are going to pursue and how they're going to handle it. And so in a few years, we'll know, you know, whether we've done all the right things in our individual offices to do the protections that are required. HIPAA's been really interesting. Like, when we built HIPAA compliant software, there's just a knowledge base and an understanding about what the best practices are based on who has and hasn't gotten in trouble. I'm in cryptocurrency now. We just launched the startup, depending on how you count it, yesterday or last week. So if I seem a little like disoriented, I am. And the cryptocurrency space is really interesting in terms of these questions. Because you have so many people going full speed ahead, we're looking at a lot of SEC stuff happening right now, and I'm getting a lot of intel about what's been happening inside these companies, and CEOs being like, we're not going to worry about the SEC, don't worry about that. Meanwhile, they're like doing crimes, and they're like, it's fine. And they think that it's going to be fine because no one's been prosecuted, but the space is just so new. So I'm actually discovering, like, there's an SEC investigation at this company and this other company, and none of it's come out yet. And so you have other CEOs who are also, when I say doing crimes, you know, I don't mean violent crimes, you know, white-collar crimes, executive crimes. No big deal. It's no big deal until, you know, until it is. That's been on my mind a lot, this idea that the enforcement is what matters, right? Like, you've got all these laws on the books, and people don't think that they have to comply with them until they do. And the crypto space is a very interesting example of that. We're going to see a lot of concern about making sure that your tokens are actually utility tokens and not securities. But just the attitude towards the, like, white-collar crimes. Like, people are just okay about it until they're not. So that's a tangent, but I thought it might be entertaining for you. So this gets into all the container stuff that I could talk about, but I want to take a show of hands. Who here is interested in a bit about container security with the time we have left? Yeah? All right. Okay, we're going to go do the rest of my container talk. That's the foundation for this. I wanted to, like, bring more DC flair, though. So software is eating the world. That was Mark Andreessen in 2011. Feels like so long ago. Containers are eating software. That's me in 2018. And not just me. We're seeing, you know, just an explosion, and it started with Docker. Docker making some, you know, really strong claims. Among their claims is security. I actually got into Docker doing some work at Aptable. Aptable takes Docker and then they put like a security wrapper around it. Basically, they handle the encryption, they handle a bunch of stuff. And they do that to make it easy for people to be, for small organizations to be HIPAA compliant. And they like to say that their configurations work out of the box. And I like to call them out on that. I think it's a real problem when these companies are making security claims about the configurations out of the box because people are going to use it out of the box and not be secure and not going to, you know, they won't understand why. So Chris is here. Chris is giving a talk later. Chris, are you actually here right now? Probably like working, getting everything like just right for you. So Chris published this interesting blog on how Docker is dead. So I had all of this stuff about how Docker isn't all that secure necessarily, but the word on the street is that Docker isn't even like as essential in the container space as it used to be. Not because the technology isn't good, the technology is wonderful, but because of the business modeling and because Google and Kubernetes have come in and kind of eaten their lunch, we're going to focus a little more on Kubernetes. And that's just some, you know, container gossip for you. I've got all the container gossip. You want to come up later, find me on Twitter. We'll spill all the tea. What's Kubernetes? According to Google, Kubernetes is the industry-leading open source container orchestrator, which powers the Kubernetes engine. And they're actually right. You know, Kubernetes is really is leading. I learned something interesting the other day, though. Kubernetes wasn't originally designed to be used in production. That surprised me. I gave this talk and basically to a bunch of like hackers. I did it at Circle CityCon in Indiana, and I was like, yeah, Kubernetes is just like a trash fire of security. I'm in my full like hacker mode ranting about it. And one of the attendees explained, like Google, the people who made Kubernetes, they weren't expecting it to be used in production. This was a surprise, and we're all catching up now. So that explains some things. And Kubernetes was being used inside Google and companies that have a tremendous amount of resources to do all the necessary optimizations. And so now Kubernetes is being used by, you know, like a bunch of folks in a garage trying to get it up and running. But, you know, Google has a lot of resources that they don't have to get the configurations just right. There's sometimes just because these big corporations are using something doesn't mean that it's right for you. But a lot of people do want to use Kubernetes because it's really helpful. And as you can see, like in theory, the security model is really good. The more you isolate things, the more you have defense in depth, the better your security is. So in theory, like there's a lot there. And just in terms of like how important containers are, here's Google talking about how containers are the Google way. Containers are the Google way. It's another reason I'm here talking about containers. Like really important. I don't know if your federal IT offices will be able to onboard them anytime soon, but over the next few years, that's how things are going. And sure, there are fancy exploits for Google and Kubernetes, but for the most part, it's just plain old misconfiguration. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. This is Showdown. Who here has heard of Showdown? So Shodan is a little bit like Google, like it's a search engine, but for these open ports that you can find. And if you do a search, there's just like a lot of open Kubernetes. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly and get to the ones I'm looking for. So here is an example of one of the issues that I'm finding in Kubernetes. And some of that is people at companies are making the decisions to have insecure defaults. And they're doing it because security isn't the only priority. And so in this instance, there's this pretty significant security flaw, but they don't want to fix it because they have their reasons. They need to do backwards compatibility, and so the security feature is off by default. I'm going to keep going through. So these are some tools. Here we are. Just wanted to get to this slide. This is my favorite slide because it's a container and it's on fire. and the reason being, I love trash. I love trash. So the people who are maintaining these projects don't actually love trash, but we're all catching up now to the importance of security as we all kind of realize that Kubernetes is indeed being used in production, and that we need better defaults. So here are a few high-level suggestions for what to do if you're going to be building containers, working on containers in your organization. The first thing is just to do updates, and this is a really basic security practice. But it merits repeating. Doing updates is really hard. It's also really hard in government offices. Of the folks here in government offices, can you raise your hand if your updates are difficult to do for one reason or another? You're not on the latest stuff. Come on, proudly, be proud, be proud. We do our best under difficult circumstances. Yeah, you know how bad that is. I don't have to tell you. But I will tell you, it's really, really bad. Terrible. It's really bad because we know where the vulnerabilities are, and we know that you haven't fixed them. And so we, hackers, can just go in and do whatever we want. But I'm a nice girl. I don't do that. But my friends aren't nice. Maybe they're not coming after you, but maybe they are. Can I get a time check as we're going?
13 minutes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, my friends are not nice. Not all of them. Shout out to my friends who aren't nice. I love you. Well, they don't, yeah. You have to minimize your attack surface. And so that starts to mean some different things with containers than it does with code. But you really just want to limit the number of ways that a hacker can get in. And so with containers, a lot of that is minimizing the extra code. You have to optimize your configuration. Now this is just incredibly hard to do. When I was originally building this talk, I thought that the takeaway from it would be that you should just use managed services. And I'm actually still leaning towards that for companies smaller than Google. Because the configurations are just really hard to get right. It takes a lot of time. And y'all can fight me on that. I'm not sure if that's fighting words yet among DevOps people. So you can, if you want to challenge me, and I'll open up for some questions and comments at the end. But my take on it is that the configuration, it's just a lot, and it's easy to get wrong. And you've got a range of companies that have services. And I am not affiliated with any of them. I work in the cryptocurrency space just trying not to get prosecuted by the SEC. And so I'm not affiliated with any of them, but Microsoft actually has services that seem good. Microsoft, for all of its issues, however you feel about them buying GitHub and such, they actually are pretty good at you not getting hacked. And they have some services for managing Kubernetes, among other things. And I feel pretty good about recommending them as like enterprise production-ready software. You've got Aptable, and I was working with them for a little while, and they do a good job taking Docker and then putting it in a security wrapper and managing all of it for you, and it's a small responsive team. You've got Aqua Security. Aqua has like all of this tremendous, they're like one of the leaders in producing content about container security, and their speakers are really good. So I feel kind of pretty good about their capabilities. You could also look at the CIS benchmarks. Who here is familiar with CIS benchmarks? Could I get someone, could I get a volunteer to explain them? Oh, that's not supposed to be a joke. No, really, can I get a volunteer to explain the CIS benchmarks? I mean, I guess I'm the volunteer. Nathan, is it okay to call on you? Is that mean?
Not mean.
That's okay. You can call on me. They are the Center for Internet Security Benchmarks. What else do you want to know? How's that? Pretty good?
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. That is pretty good. I guess I'll just elaborate that on to say that the benchmarks for this are perhaps too complete. It's something like 300 different things for you to do, depending on choose your own adventure.
Elissa, I think they're fine if you don't want to run any applications.
I think, have you considered quitting software? Why, yes, I have. My book is available at the end of this talk. Yeah, so the optimizations are hard. I'm really hoping that someone, not me, will write up a TLDR in, like O'Reilly or Pact book format on how to do this. I hope someone, not me, does it, but if someone, not me, doesn't, then I don't know. I'm already working on 3 books. Let me get one out. Know your network. This really isn't specific to containers, but you just can't say it often enough. And Andrew Case is really one of the experts on this, and he's very nice. So know your network means that you need to be monitoring your network. And if you're not able to do your updates, that's especially important. But it's probably also something that your organization will let you do. Now, knowing your network is really neat, because if and when you get breached, and you're probably getting breached, because, most organizations do at some point or another. It's just, do you know it? So an analogy for a little while, because I'm a very strange, nice girl, and I do strange things, and I thought it'd be really fun to become an Orthodox Jew, so I did. Yeah, this is a tangent, but I'm going to bring it all together. And when you're an Orthodox Jew, you can't eat bugs. No eating bugs. And so you have to search all of your produce for bugs. You can't just, eat a salad. You have to, take the lettuce and look at it. You're like, is there a bug there? And there's an expression among Orthodox Jews. If you're not finding bugs, you're eating bugs. And it's actually true. And so it's the same thing, with hackers in your network. If you're not finding hackers, you're eating bugs. Basically. Yeah, so knowing your network is important. And take it off the public internet. So I'm soon going to get some really interesting documentation from a company that has been using containers to follow HIPAA compliance. And they've been taking their containers off the public internet, and then they use VPC peering to connect it to Aptable, which they're using for other stuff. So they've got some things on AWS, and they have some things somewhere else. And it's all very complicated for everyone who has to interact with the containers. They have to VPN in. But you take things off the public internet, I'm not going to find you on Shodan. And finding you on Shodan isn't that great because there are all of these exploits that we all know about, all these common misconfigurations. So one of the best ways to be really secure is just take things off the public internet. And if you're interested in questions around how to do this, I'm going to start putting together some documentation. So you can encourage me, so I'll actually do it. But also, I think it's a really interesting question on the different best practices around that. I'd be happy to have those conversations. Oh, this is too soon. So we'll do that at the end. I think it's okay if you're a woman and you want to be shy. But I also think if you're a woman and you don't want to be shy, this is really good timing for that. So I used to be really shy. I was an Orthodox Jewish housewife. I think I'm a good role model for coming out of that, no longer being shy, which is why I have the slide where I'm like, oh yeah, now we applaud me. So let's take a few minutes. We have just a few. Does anyone have a question or a story or something about the interaction between government and IT and my friends who aren't nice? In the back, anyone? Did I not wake you up? They're not going to let me come back. Nathan, I'm sorry. I tried. Yes, please. Oh, I thought that was a hand. I was just like really optimistic. Yes.
What are you working on?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm like super excited about this. So cryptocurrency is really neat. There's so much that we can do with smart contracts, but people aren't securing them. It's even worse than Kubernetes. And if you don't secure your smart contracts, then you can't fix them after. That's the point of a smart contract. It's immutable. And so if you launch your smart contract with vulnerabilities, then my friends who aren't nice can just go in and take the money. And they don't have to give it back, because you can't find them in the money. So good luck. And so we're launching the security auditing firm with Jonathan Haas, who was formerly head of security audits at QuantStamp. Before that, he managed security at Snap. He did things at Lockheed Martin. And Amazon. Basically makes me feel really bad about myself, because I'm 39 and he's 22. And I just don't understand how he did all this stuff already. But I guess he started when he was 11. When I was 11, we didn't have internet. My eyesight is terrible. Looks like 3 minutes. Yeah, so I'm really excited. We're going to be doing security audits, which is like a really basic good thing that we need some people to do. And after that, we're going to build out products and software, including maybe compliance. I told this to an ITDC friend last night, and he's like, that's boring. I was just like, no, I love compliance and insurance. My dad's a VP at Guardian. Love insurance. I told you I'm strange. Yes? Oh, it is called Lean Out. And I guess let's give 2 copies away. Is that a good way to do it? How should we give them away? What's a good way to do that? Maybe, yeah, whoever told stories, that's a good idea. So who told stories? Do you remember?
They do.
They do, yes. Who told a story? Raise your hand. You did. Let's give you a book. Who else told a story? Whoever else told a story, come up to me at the end. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing. I can sign it with your name if you want later, or someone else's name. I'll say anything you want. Yes, you had a question.
For smaller teams that don't have
Yeah. So, as I said that, like, y'all can fight me if you disagree. I think that if you don't have, like, a dedicated person or team to really understand all the configuration nuances, it makes sense to use a managed service. And then it's just picking, like, which managed service you think is going to be good for you. Like, what's a brand that you like and trust, has the features that you want. So that's my recommendation right now. I'm not affiliated with any container company, and so if I say I like them, they seem good. So right now I like Aqua and Aptable and Microsoft. I'm not that bullish on Docker because one of the major founders just left. I'm a little worried about the organization. I'm not the only one. So Docker is open source. Docker will continue. But I think for some of the enterprise solutions, they may not be getting as much love as a company that's more well-resourced. I think it's time for me to get off stage, but whoever told a story, come up. First one up who told a story. And again, thank you so much for hosting an inclusive event. Thank you for making me feel welcome. Thank you for bringing IT and the federal government, federal IT, hackers like me, all in one room. I think that's really special.
Thanks for being with us.
It was good. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Elissa. That was fantastic.